Today we welcome Spec back as a Q4 sponsor. With the holiday cycle fast approaching, we never know what the fraudster's next scheme will be. With Spec and their patented no-code orchestration platform, you can be ready for them this season with full coverage and visibility into the entire customer journey, with the ability to collect data, deploy in any tech stack, and connect to any solution to answer their attacks, such as calling third-party APIs, building logic and workflows, all with the ability to take action anywhere in the entire customer journey. Visit www.specprotected.com to learn more and schedule a demo to make your holidays a little more jolly. Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the Fraud Boxer podcast. I have promised some heavy hitters coming into the fall, and I think I have the heaviest hitter of them all. I have Kim Sutherland from LexisNexis Risk Solutions here today. How are you doing?
I'm great, and thank you, Jordan, for saying that.
I mean, do you not recognize how much of a heavy hitter, of an influencer you are in our industry? Like, you're kind of a big deal, just a little bit.
It's just because I'm old, but thank you very much.
I think it's
doing
because
this a long time.
I think you know your stuff, multiple sides of this transaction, which is what we're going to talk about today. So obviously LexisNexis, they have quite the risk portfolio with the acquisition of ThreatMetrics, Emailage. And I think, for people that are a little more finger on the pulse, they know the Behaviosec. How do we say that? How do we say that exactly? Is it Behaviosec?
No, you said it exactly right, Behaviosec.
Perfect. Now, I think people might not be as familiar with that, and we will talk about that one today. But I think what we really want to get into today is this buzzword of biometrics. And that's where we were really going to start. So first of all, before we jump right into it, like, how are you? What's new with you? Let's talk about you as a person before we jump into the actual content here, if we could.
Well, gee, thanks. I'm great. About to go on vacation, which is a very rare thing for me because our fraud and identity business never stops and it continues to grow, which is a wonderful thing. But at the same time, no one in our industry gets many breaks. So
going anywhere fun?
I am trying to be a great aunt, and I'm taking my 7-year-old niece and 11-year-old nephew to Disney.
Like the Florida one or the one over here?
The Florida one.
Okay.
Which, I mean, I guess August, and it's not a good time for that. But
a lot of people are going back to school, so maybe you'll get a little bit there. But
that's what I did for timing. So I'm very much into planning. I'm also we're from a professional standpoint in 2024 planning, but I'm a planner in my family as well. So I picked the weekend the week that I thought was going to have the least activity before they went back to school.
Excellent. I am a big Disney fan. I actually, because I only live a few miles from Disneyland over here on the West Coast, I do have an annual pass, and I go fairly regularly, sometimes multiple times a week. Right now, it's a little different with with kind of the lockout dates for the end of summer, but it's a lot of fun. Like,
I'm learning new things about you. You go multiple times a week.
Yeah, so sometimes, and it's great because like my staff, they like to go too, and we can totally just go there sometimes for team building, and it all works out pretty well.
That doesn't fit with the boxer part of your title and things, because I thought we were going to spend time talking about the fact that I love boxing.
I was going to transition to that, and very nice. You do. So you love combat sports. Do you like regular boxing? Do you love UFC? Like, what is it?
Both. I love competition. And I love people doing, fighting for their best. So boxing has just been one of those things. I grew up in Louisville, Kentucky with Muhammad Ali and all those kind of things. I was very young at that point, but still, boxing's always been a big piece of my life. So boxing and UFC are big things that I love to do or love to watch.
Do you watch like the WWE wrestling too?
I don't like anything like that. So
it's got to be real. Has to be actual, something on the line here. Got it.
There you go.
See, we all have surprising things,
Yes, I'm one of the few females that when I'm in the arena watching, I look around and I see mainly guys but there's some really diehard
So,
females that really like it too.
so you'll travel to go actually see this live.
Absolutely. I love
Wow.
watching live events. So Vegas, and I'm trying to go around to places out of the country right now. There was a great event in Australia recently for UFC, and I was like, I should have been there. Brazil, of course, So yes, I
Yeah.
love Japan.
Yeah, that would be cool. That'd be a lot of fun to go see those like in foreign countries. But they had like Fight Island during COVID. Do they still have that? Do they still do anything out on the island? It was like outside of Dubai or something.
I have never even heard of that.
That's where like when they had the US shut down and they were trying to do so they did like the UFC Apex Arena in Vegas, but they wouldn't let anybody in. And they
Right,
would just
right.
have the fights with nobody there. But then so Dana White started hosting them on this Fight Island thing, which is like outside of like the UAE. And the restrictions were different. So he literally had an island. I'll send you the stuff after the show. It was super. I think they only did like one big fight there, but it was one of the big ones. It might have even been a McGregor one, maybe. But he's had a rough go the last few bouts of his.
So somehow I missed that piece, but I'm very happy that now there's like people in seats and that kind of thing again.
Yeah.
Although we know that COVID rates are increasing yet again.
Yeah, that's what it's pretty bad here in Orange County right now. It's like we're getting all like the notifications of telling people like suggesting people mask up again. And even at home, like we've had some scratchy throats and we were just at like the Taylor Swift concert a couple of weeks ago. Then when we went to brunch, we actually took public transit up there. So like we're just checking all the boxes for all the things to get COVID. So just trying to limit my for the next 5 days out where I go and be responsible enough. But I did get vaccinated, boosted and all that, but it's still out there. I think like people did get that false sense of security that it was all over because like we just haven't been seeing people get as sick, but people still get sick. Even the RSV, I had RSV at the beginning of the year this year, and that was rough. That was one of the sickest I've ever been. So there's a lot of things out there still, people.
That's right.
So let's talk about LexisNexis, shall we?
Yes.
Could you give us a brief history of LexisNexis Risk Solutions and what it means, what it is, and then we'll jump right into biometrics and scare everybody.
So LexisNexis Risk Solutions is a part of a larger company called Relics. Our focus is around information and analytics to help with our name, risk, help all size enterprises and smaller businesses help in being able to make better decisions from a standpoint of compliance, credit risk decisioning, and then the area that I focus on, which is fraud. I focus primarily on consumer fraud, but we also focus on business fraud as well.
So I think a lot of the people that are probably listening to this have used you guys in some capacity multiple times. Like, I mean, a lot of us used Emailage. I've used Emailage at multiple companies. I've used ThreatMetrics at multiple companies. There's also like other known, like kind of like smaller products that like probably aren't smaller to you guys, but like lesser known to probably a lot of people in our industry. Like one of those projects is like Bridger. And we use that internally here at iHerb to help us with our OFAC compliance. We do business in a lot of foreign countries, and we had a hard time maintaining our own list of like banned nationals, banned countries, and all those things with how it changes from time to time. And then a lot of the names, we were having trouble with matching the correct names because names could be multiple people can have the same name. And we have been using you guys successfully to navigate those waters as far as our compliance goes in those territories. But all that being said, you guys have joined the trend of biometrics and having a product offering in biometrics. Mm-hmm. And I think that when a lot of people, if you think biometrics, we all think of movies where they scan your retina to get into the vault or some sort of thumbprint situation to get in. And that is some of it. I think that there's other forms, and I think that like you and I will talk about this probably the next couple of minutes here about like how certain types of biometrics is becoming more the norm, whether that's the hard biometrics, but we wanted to kind of talk about this thing called behavioral biometrics. And if you could, to you, what does behavioral biometrics mean?
So I think the easiest definition is looking at the way someone interacts with something else, right? So in this situation that we provide behavioral biometrics is how someone interacts with their device. And just kind of going back just a little bit, you mentioned two different types of products that we focus on. or that we offer. One would be an email edge solution, and we consider that to fall within our our digital risk assessment capabilities. So we offer a number of digital identity intelligence solutions. The two that most people know names of is ThreatMetrics and Email Age. And then we offer a host of physical identity intelligence solutions. From an identity verification standpoint, probably the most recognized is Instant ID for a lot of KYC verification capabilities. And then there's other like analytic models. For us, behavioral biometrics is not the first time we've been in the general biometric space, and behavioral is very different. We almost don't even know if we should be calling it biometrics. So years ago, we offered fingerprint biometrics. That's a true biometric, right? And we use that in terms of ensuring that the same person who came back the second, third, fifth time when they're cashing a check or when they were taking a proctored test for the MCATs or some other type of proctored testing facility offering an exam, it was to be able to let you back in if you took a break. So it was scanning the fingerprint and then linking that back to an identity. We also had voice biometrics. And then we still today offer facial recognition in combination with document authentication. We kind of made that, the reason why we thought behavioral was such an important component in the digital space. We first entered to look at it, is a human or is it a bot? And we were trying to be able to make that distinction because so many of our customers were being challenged in the digital space of trying to discern those two types of entities. And it made a big difference in capturing fraud for them. We then moved it a little further past, is it a human or is it a bot? And we started to be able to look at is the individual that is transacting, operating more like a fraudster? Are they navigating on a page more faster than typical? Are they cutting and pasting information that doesn't make sense? That's kind of what we think of from a behavioral standpoint. But we love the idea of being able to offer low friction or no friction capabilities, passive activities, as well as things that are active. And so that turn and the acquisition of Behaviosec allowed us to also start to look at it from an authentication lens.
Yeah, I think a lot of that's a really interesting point too, is like the passive versus like the friction, we're doing exercises here internally where we have some tools that we have developed that do the same thing as far as like trying to discern traffic if it's bot or if it's human. But the way that we sometimes have to do that is like place your finger and hold or some sort of interaction from the customer. And what we're trying to do is we're starting to look at that more with the help of one of our vendors in that particular space, is look at the ones that we do have to have a interdiction or some sort of interaction from the customer as more of a false positive versus being like, oh, we're just saving ourselves, because at the end of the day, you could friction everybody if you really wanted to, and then be absolutely certain. But the idea is to only friction the people that are bots or the people that are fake or the fraudsters, not friction the good customers, So if we're identifying and frictioning those people, then we probably are falling short. But I think, a lot of the people, as far as like interacting with biometric stuff, I think it's becoming, and we talked about this a little bit on the prep call for this, it's becoming a little more normal than it used to be. I think a lot of times, like when we were talking about this over the last 10 years, people were freaking out about what you're going to have my face in a database somewhere. No, you're not going to. But then Apple goes and puts out Face ID to unlock everything on their phone. And like people sign up, like almost 90% of America signs up overnight on that. But then at the same time, like the airports, we get so frustrated like going through security at airports. So then a company called Clear pops up and does the same thing, scan through your face, off you go, you're authenticated. And even Delta flights, they're doing, when you're walking and boarding onto the plane now, they're doing scanning your face for international flights too, So I think that like it's becoming a little more normal and expected. Stadiums are doing entries now with that. Now they've been talking about doing that for a long time. That's where people really started freaking out. But at the same time, like people seem to be becoming a little more comfortable with the actual interaction. But I think that to your point of having the passive, it's a lot more interesting when you start to peel back those layers of what you can discern from a device or an interaction or a session, essentially, without having the person really know. And that could be scary, I think, to people that figure out that that's happening to them. But let's talk about that.
Yeah, it's less about that the person doesn't know and more about it doesn't interfere in the process. So a couple of things. One is that people have this really negative view of friction. Friction is not a bad word, right? Friction should only be applied when appropriate. So we look at risk appropriate friction, number one. So we try to get people to realize that there are times when I would expect friction and be extremely upset, in fact, and terrified of the process if there wasn't some engagement, interaction happening.
Like logging into a bank from a completely new computer.
Or withdrawing money, right?
Oh, that's
if
true.
I could withdraw a large sum of money out of my 401k and never have to do anything, I would just not be sure what was really happening behind the scenes. And that's how the general consumer probably thinks. If I have my sister or somebody else, they would be terrified of that process. But the thing that's different about behavioral is that it is contextual. And so when I think about a physical biometric like my face, using my face to board a plane as your example, or using my face to unlock my phone, my face doesn't really change. So if somebody was able to somehow make a mask, capture my face, do something to be able to say that this is Kim's face, again, my face doesn't change. Behavioral biometrics is quite different. Every interaction that I do, the types of different companies I go to, I probably have a different behavioral aspect with them. When I'm checking my bank account, I probably am interacting with that app or the website different than when I'm on Netflix or when I'm making a purchase on my favorite retailer. So behavioral biometrics is very contextual in nature. It doesn't have to be linked to any form of PII at all. And so, in fact, it's very, from our standpoint, it has a lot of opportunity to be privacy enhancing. There are times when I just need to be the same user, or I need to be a user that's not a bot. Doesn't mean you don't need to know it's Kim, right? I just need to be in a safe spot, and it pairs very well with all the other forms of device risk assessment. So that's why we've paired threat metrics with behavioral biometrics, because those two allow you to really look at the full digital intelligence of a transaction. But it's just very different than a physical biometric. And that's why I think that so many people are hung up on, do you call it behavioral biometrics? Do you call it behavioral analytics? What do you use as the term? But in the end, it's really looking at how you interact with the device. And that gives such tremendous insights around the transaction itself.
So you guys have acquired this company, but were you guys already doing anything kind of in this space a little bit before that, already?
Yeah, so we actually, LexisNexis Risk Solutions had created its own behavioral biometric offering and had offered that for over 2 years and had a significant adoption of the solution. And it was only the fact that as we built out our roadmap on the future capabilities, again, like behavioral biometric authentication, where we decided that it would actually, timing was just perfect, that Behaviosec also had felt that was the right time for them to perhaps get acquired. So it just was a great timing and fit perfectly with our roadmap and allowed us to accelerate our roadmap significantly to be able to get the needs addressed by our customers.
Now, you had just mentioned just a minute ago too that you can leverage Behaviosec with threat metrics too. So those things they play together then. So can you talk a little bit about how those two things work together?
Yeah, so behavioral biometrics alone should probably not be used alone, actually, right? Because again, it's contextual. And so I think that a lot of offerings for behavioral biometrics do some lightweight form of device and digital assessment. And so again, we're taking our robust capabilities of threat metrics and using the same JavaScript. So from a deployment standpoint, it's very easy to deploy one set of JavaScript that allows you to then assess the risk of the device, the digital insights that we get through our digital identity network, and layer that with behavioral biometrics, which we have seen gives a significant lift in being able to detect fraud. And more importantly than just detecting fraud, I think, is also ensuring that your good customers can go through it easier. So trying to reduce some of the unnecessary friction in the process for your returning customers and safer transactions.
Yeah, I think, I try to drive it home on this particular show, and then even on my panels, is that a lot of us that are in this space, we are always looking at these customers through the lens of like, what are they up to? What are they trying to steal? And I think we do lose sight that the vast majority of the customers are good customers that are just trying to buy
That's
something
right.
and move along or interact or start a TV show or transfer something. They're trying to do something legitimate. And we're only seeing this very small percentage, even sometimes a fraction of a percentage of people that are up to something other than that. And you don't want to try and solve for the few impacting the majority.
That's right.
And I think like so some of the stuff that I've seen like in the behavioral space, and I'm sure you guys do the same thing, is like really trying to make, and I know ThreatMetrics does it, is like this persona thing where they're trying to kind of get like a snapshot of a person to know that they're a legitimate person. Like, so how they interact with sites, like you said earlier, how fast they click through things, how they're holding their phone, is it plugged in, is it charging, those sorts of
That's
things
right.
that like look at, like that can go into if it's a legitimate customer. Because if it's sitting down flat on the ground, it's plugged in and it's typing really fast, it's probably not a legitimate customer, but at the same time, how I hold my phone when I'm sitting on the same couch every night, looking at the same websites every night, like that interaction for me, if they're looking at my session, should match if you're using these computers and these passive biometric situations, behavioral biometrics, where to show like, yeah, this is what he normally does at 6 o'clock on a Friday night. He's not out drinking, he's sitting watching Justified reruns over here on FX, like something like that, which I think it goes a long way in identifying, because for so many years we had been through this device ID thing, which ThreatMetrics did exceedingly well. And then their rules engine, which ThreatMetrics still does exceedingly well, but putting these parameters on how our customers, we want them to interact with the site, how we expect them to interact with the site. And when they do something different, what happens? But that can be kind of static, and then we went through this next evolution where we were like dynamically scoring transactions based on certain some of the criteria I just mentioned. But I think bringing in, because you need kind of a combo, like you just said, like I know that like behavioral could be bought as a standalone or combined with ThreatMetrics, and like you said, it probably shouldn't be used as your stand-up single fraud engine, because you need to put certain parameters on people and then do the behavioral in the middle of that to get a full snapshot of what people are doing. I think a lot of it, I'm going on a big long thing here,
Yeah.
is a lot of like what we had done for a decade plus was just look at the checkout. Like, what are they doing at checkout? And we've been trying to move authentication earlier in the process. Like when they register, does this information match? But there's that middle part, which I think a vast majority of e-commerce people especially don't do well, is what are they doing in session? What are they doing after they register, but before they check out? Are they going to like the account details page to steal information, but what are they doing? Like what actions are they taking? What movements are they doing that you can really determine earlier in the process if we even want to let them get to checkout? Because you get all these bots going through your website. They're like holding inventory, so things look like they're sold out when they're not really sold out, and it could create all sorts of other problems downstream. Like the earlier you can detect if someone's a threat or not is better. So yeah, do you have any opinions about all that?
Well, that was a lot.
It was.
But the one thing I would just say is that behavioral biometrics is not a surveillance tool. And so the reason why I bring
Oh,
that up is that where customers, so in some of the, examples you were given, it almost, made me feel like it was monitoring throughout the transaction. And that is not how behavioral biometrics, at least our behavioral biometrics works. Our customers consciously make a decision on where they want to place the assessment, because a lot of people are concerned about what is it, is it monitoring too much? And the answer is it's only taking a look where you need it to.
Interesting.
The biggest area of fraud, the highest fraud rates still exist at new account opening for almost every customer, right? And so account takeover is a big issue, and logins and payment fraud. But the number one area from a fraud rate standpoint is still at new account opening. And there's not a lot that you know about an individual. You can start to assess their PII if they are providing it. And we are strong advocates of only ask for the information you need. So we believe greatly in data minimization principles. And then there are, again, a lot of transactions that many of our customers do that are okay if they're anonymous. They just want to make sure it's just a safe environment. And so behavioral biometrics, we've made it modular in nature so that customers can combine that with other solutions if they don't use threat metrics. I'm not sure why somebody wouldn't, but there are many competitors in the space, and they're all very good. So I'm not going to say anything there, but we've made it so that it can be modular and used with threat metrics, with other solutions, but that assessment from a digital standpoint is very important. Then if somebody wants to layer behavioral biometrics in other parts of the flow, account change is one area that gets overlooked, password resets, those kind of things. That makes a lot of sense. We've tried to use analytic models to make it easier to see that it's Jordan over and over again. So we only need a few interactions if they're long enough to be able to say, this is how Jordan behaves. If the interactions are much shorter, it might take a few more interactions to build that profile so that it can be used for authentication purposes. But you don't have to use behavioral biometrics for authentication. Being able to use it as a risk signal is probably the most common way companies use behavioral. And it's really, again, is this person operating in a way that makes me concerned about a process, right? Are they operating because they're pasting phone numbers, they're navigating too quickly on the page, they're doing things. We even have customers that leverage behavioral biometrics in trying to detect if a scam is occurring. And scams are probably one of the top issues that are talked about with our customers right now, because it's so difficult since it's the legitimate consumer, the legitimate customer that's involved, but they could be doing things under duress or just kind of normal behavior. And so we can combine the fact that they are on an active call and they're also navigating on their page in a way that might not be as normal, to say, just maybe ask them a few additional questions because they might be coached right now, and this doesn't seem like a normal behavior. So I just think it's
like a thing that says, are you on the phone right now? Is someone telling you to send this money?
So I mean, I just think there's a lot of exciting things for the future for behavioral. More and more people are more comfortable with it. And like you said earlier in the conversation, we're seeing this in our data biometrics in general throughout our lives being used. And so I think people are becoming more accustomed to leveraging how I interact in a process.
I think that this sort of thing, this behavioral biometrics, is going to be key in our, quote, passwordless future as the world tries to transition to passkeys. I know we keep hearing that it's coming one of these days, but you basically aren't going to get a successful passkey universe without having some sort of biometric interaction for the authentication piece. Like it's just you can't. But I think you had a really, really, really good point there. A couple of things in that, which was like, you kind of got to know what you're selling and what you need. And like you said, never ask for more than you really need. Like, does MyFitnessPal need my phone number? Does it need my social security number? Definitely not, but if I'm extending credit to somebody, some of those things might be a little more important, but so you could put Behaviosec on each individual thing. So if I wanted to have it like ad account registration, or then again, could I do it a second time at like a change details page or like the password reset? I think that a lot of people don't like, and you hit the nail on the head. It's like new account creations. This is something that I think has been overlooked for far too long. We were so concerned about fraud transactions happening, guest checkout transactions, those are one thing. And then ATOs we had a year ago or 10 years ago, and then now they're back again, and they're worse than ever. But this new account registrations, I think that people really need to be worried about a little more, because not only like is it people trying to do things like hold inventory, make things look like they're sold out, but then the promo code abuse alone, like new customer acquisition promo code abuse, is massive right now. Like anybody like that's listening to this, if your website offers a deep discount for new customers and you have any sort of way to tie individual multiple accounts together into one, just do a quick look in your system of how many people are abusing your promo codes. I bet you're losing tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, maybe even millions of dollars in promo code abuse happening on your site right now. So I think that people need to start paying a little more attention to it, because you might be losing like 1.5 million in chargebacks a year for any decent enterprise level merchant, but you might be losing $10 million in lost margin just on promo code abuse from like the same 10 people. Like these are things that people need to look at.
And that is not even one that I would say goes back to behavioral biometrics as much as it is saying, is it the same? Is the same device going across multiple accounts? Is there, the same email address? I mean, there's so many ways that you can try to look at promo code abuse. And look, I'm a girl that likes a coupon, so but I wasn't ready to use them properly, right? So I think that absolutely, a lot of the digital risk signals that you can get will help tremendously in promo code abuse or in account takeover risk. And while I said that new account opening has the highest fraud rate, the highest fraud volume definitely is going to happen with logins, just because there's so many more login transactions there than there are account opening transactions.
Yeah, and like I have a thing coming up that I'm doing next month, a little live talk about like what people are after on ATOs now. Like I think for so long people thought that ATOs were just going after stored credentials on the account to try and make purchases. No, it's like what's stored on the account, what the information is on the account, just like even like address information, email information. Just getting aged accounts. Like ATOs are still massive, and you'll see like if you look at login traffic, you'll see when your sites are getting hit and blasted and all that. But it's just like the ATOs now are so much more coordinated and so much more available given all the breaches that are happening. But the value of accounts is it's reward points, it's tickets stored on the account, it's Hilton points, it's rewards dollars on accounts. There's so many things, and it's legitimacy. If that account has 10 years of history buying 5 things a month from like a typical e-commerce reseller, and then all of a sudden you get ATO'd in there, you swap that credit card out real quick to some stolen one and just rip it for $100,000, it might not look that much different to the regular fraud tools. But if you had something like watching the behavior, I guess, on that, you could probably pull that one out a little bit more. And I think the risk signals, like I've used loose behavioral tools before, and I just consume the signals and I consume them into like a tool like Threatmetrics and then wrote rules around the signals that were provided to me, and it was pretty useful at the end of the day.
Yeah, I mean, we even see trends where the hot topic becomes synthetic identity fraud. The fear of people, or the concern of people mixing together real legitimate information with kind of like this Frankenstein approach to data, where you just kind of put together a lot of other fake pieces of data. Synthetic identity fraud is a real concern, but for a while it was a little less focused on, because account takeover fraud had, it was much easier just to assume an existing account than to have to create one from scratch. Now we're hearing more account takeover fraud concerns again, as well as first-party fraud, where the legitimate user is the one that is actually, or the real person is denying that they actually had opened the account. So concerns around non-repudiation, or how we can help in non-repudiation, is a big area that we're hearing a lot about. How do you make sure that the person, when we know it's their behavior or it's their face that actually, unlocked the phone or did something, how do you deal with that?
So that's so funny. I mean, this is a story for another, or a topic for another day, but I have been on a warpath lately about this like identity token situation. Like, how can we, like, what are the repercussions for a person that gets caught in their life? Because like there's, coming out of COVID, all these people that were doing this first party fraud, whether it be like just claiming a fraud chargeback or calling the vendor and saying I never got it, even though we have a photo of it sitting on their porch, like
Buyer's
this,
remorse. It was buyer's
yeah,
remorse. I didn't really need that treadmill, that kind of thing.
yeah. Now the gyms are back open again. Well, I don't need this thing taking up my garage. But this liar buyer stuff, and it's like this moral gray area where they don't feel like it's as wrong as it's same thing. Like we have like all these smash and grabs are pretty much like all over like the LA news right now.
Yeah.
And if you go into the comments, people are like, oh, the stores have insurance. What does it matter? The stores have insurance. Stores have insurance. And it's like these things matter. And it's like when people are buying stuff from websites and they're like, just charge it back. It's like, they make billions of dollars. What does it matter if like, that treadmill is one of them, but it's this moral gray area that like, I don't know how we're going to solve for this, because the people that wind up holding the bag at the end of the process is either going to be the merchant or the issuing bank, on some of these liability shift 3D secure situations, not really usually the end customer. The end customer usually gets away with it. And
well, not for long, right? Because eventually all of the rates of everything goes up. And I mean, that's the only way that you can cover it. So moral gray area, I don't see how it's gray at all. I mean, maybe I'm just too black and white.
But to them,
right,
it's a moral gray area. Yeah, no, it's stealing. It's literally, it's no, like charging back that treadmill that you have just because like you don't want to pay for it anymore is no different than walking into that same store and stealing it right out of the showroom, putting it in the back of your truck and driving home. Zero difference there. But like, I feel like there's something's going to have to give eventually that like, if we can prove it, no matter what, and then winning a chargeback is one thing, but like, I want more. Like, I want more liability to fall onto these consumers as a like nuclear deterrent as to don't file false claims. Like, there has to be something. I don't know. Maybe anybody in the comments or something can come up with something there. Like, not chopping the hands off, please, people. Let's have it be like actual economic damage versus like physical damage. But there needs to be some sort of liability swing back to the consumers. There has to be a disincentive to lie, in my opinion.
Well, yeah, I think that one thing is that it might not happen a lot to a particular company with the same individual. But this is where I'm seeing this more contributory consortium model kind of approach, because if I have done it once, I've probably done it another time with another company. So being able to make these virtual blacklists or at least sharing known fraudulent information is another reason why we try to focus heavily on enabling our customers and in different industries and even across different geographies to be able to share known fraud information. And that would be a great example. If somebody has done what we consider to be a first party fraud issue at retailer X, they may have done it at retailer Y and at a logistics company in another area as well, and maybe even a financial institution. So starting to see that pattern is what makes a big difference.
That's excellent. So as we begin to wrap up here today, this has been a very fun conversation. You and I had talked about 3 trends that you see coming down the pipe as far as like the LexisNexis Risk Solutions area. Would you like to talk about those?
Oh, sure. I think that one area is this continued need to try to have as good a customer experience as possible while keeping fraud risk down. And I think this is going to, continue to stick with us. Customers are constantly trying to balance these two areas. So that's going to be true in 2024 as well, right? Trying to figure out how do I make that balance. And we've seen some interesting shifts. There have been many times when at the table has been a marketing leader that is making a lot of the decisions. And we've seen a lot of people say, move over. We got to now have, a fraud leader leading this discussion again, and vice versa. So we're going to constantly see that shift. That's probably number one that we're seeing. How do you balance customer experience?
That's an excellent one, especially like the marketing people. That resonates with me so much because I love my marketing team. We're brilliant. Our customer acquisition is brilliant. But every once in a while, they're like, let's do one of these. And I'm like, it's going to get ripped, guys. They're like, nah. And then immediately it's getting ripped. And I'm like, see, told you. So I've been shoehorning myself back into the room when all those conversations so we can make sure we cover up all of the risk vectors that are probably going to happen.
The second one, scam activity, I think is going to continue to increase. there's a big push right now in consumer education, which I think is great, but it's so hard. But just continuing to watch the evolution of scams and how, I guess, how well actually consumers do listen to the great principles that so many companies are trying to give out. I mean, you probably have been receiving lots of emails from your financial institutions and your top retailers on just looking out for scams, but that's an area that's going to continue to be strong in 2024.
Excellent. Yeah, I did a prediction thing probably like in March of this year that was saying like consumer education is going to be the next one of the next big things. You know, you see like the Zelle, it's like just like I joked earlier about like pop up a thing. Are you on the phone right now? Are you about to send money? You know, Zelle has all those things. Do you know this person? Are you sure you know this person before you send the money? You know, and so definitely education. I do. I get the emails all the time, and I just got one from the IRS the other day too. It's like, don't, like, unless we send you snail mail, like don't fall for it. Don't send anything, you know. And it's just we have to constantly stay on top. Saving people from themselves is what I call it. You know, at the end of the day. And then, you know, that I just touched on that. I think the third one, like we had kind of talked about, was kind of like faster payments and what's going to happen with that too.
That's right. That's the third one. So yeah, payments, you know, as we, you know, I think people have gotten very comfortable with peer-to-peer payments. Now, if we think about institutions being able to do faster payments in their processes, what does it look like and how do you protect against that? How do you leverage both the physical information and the digital information to be able to make payments just safer in general? So that's going to be something we spend a lot of time on.
Yeah, and I think, you know, there's still some questions out there about, like, because they still haven't settled the fully on like the liability and where it's going to land. Obviously, they want to try and push it on issuers, which then causing issuers financial harm is going to slow down those faster payments. But putting tools like behavior and biometrics around those sessions might still enable those payments to be sent fast. So yeah.
And I know you only said three, but the fourth thing I would be is just let's all just pay close attention to the regulatory landscape. I think there's going to be a lot of things happening at the state level, at the federal level in the U.S., and then, you know, throughout different countries, as we look at issues from privacy on and how that impacts the decisions we make and the liability decisions that end up as a result of it.
I keep seeing, like, you know, as we finish right here, like I keep, like, this liability is a word that as I've recorded episodes and gone through, liability is the one word that keeps coming up. And I think that there's something brewing in liability and where the liability is, because for so long, like, merchants have been over and just been taking these chargebacks in, these losses in. They started to push back with 3D Secure. You know, I think that, like, there's a reckoning coming, hopefully, on where liability lands at the end of the day, and whether that be with consumers, whether that be with like issuers, whether that be with networks, something's got to give, and that's got to come through regulation, you know.
That's right. And so I think that's the gray area right now.
Yeah, the regulation gray area.
That's right.
Well, thank you so much for coming on my show. Thank you for giving me your time. I know you're extremely busy. I am ever so thankful of you doing this for me. And thank you for sharing your thoughts on behavioral biometrics, on Behaviosec, LexisNexis Risk Solutions in general. I always love talking to you. You have such great insights in what's happening in the actual risk area. So thank you. Yeah.
Jordan, thank you so much. It was a lot of fun. I hope I can do it again.
I hope you can too. I will put links to all of the things that we talked about today in the episode description. LexisNexis, everybody knows threat metrics, everybody knows email age. Now you know Behaviosec. We'll make sure that we can get people going your way, and then I'll put your LinkedIn in there too if people want to ever LinkedIn and reach out to you. I know you're busy, but you know, it's the right thing to do.
I can make time.
I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Once again, thank you so much, and we'll talk soon. Thanks for listening to today's episode. I really hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to visit our incredible friends and sponsor, Spec. Get your holiday team ready with full visibility into the customer journey all season long using their patented no-code orchestration platform, and be ready for whatever comes your way with the ability to collect data, call third-party APIs, build logic and workflows, all with the ability to take action anywhere in the entire customer journey. Visit www.specprotected.com to schedule your demo and learn more. Thank you.